that her mother was perpetrating on her. And there is proof to that the state is hiding from you.
Your Honor, instruct him to be quiet.
You need to stop talking.
This man confessed to a murder while testifying on the stand today, and then hours later, his friend gets arrested for being a co-conspirator. Isn't that crazy? So apparently Zachary Hughes is a well-known concert pianist, and I think he's around his early 30s right now. He's accused of murdering Christina Purcell. Christina Purcell had about over 30 stab wounds in her body. She was found in her home, but the trial is dubbed as the Rose Petal Murder Trial because apparently when they discovered her body, there were rose petals scattered everywhere. Now, it's not like they didn't expect Zachary Hughes to go up there and confess to the murder, because the defense attorney, when he was giving his opening statements, he said that Zachary Hughes is going to say that he killed Christina Purcell, but he's going to tell you why. He's going to give you his side of the story.
And Zach is going to testify because Zach has been waiting for this opportunity to tell a group of people like you.
He's nodding.
What really happened, which is that he took the life of Christina Purcell.
Oh.
And crucially, he's been waiting and wanting to tell you why. Now, the why to a case...
I don't know if opening statements was the first time that they realized that he was going to admit to the murder or if he had already admitted before, but oh my gosh, what an interesting defense. Wouldn't this be more for, I don't know, sentencing for the judge? Like, hey, my client did it, yes, but here's the reason why. You shouldn't give him X amount of years. You should give him less. You should give him probation, blah, 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 blah. Like, this is crazy. So this is the testimony that he gives, which I believe led to law enforcement arresting his former friend, John Mello, I think is his name. And I think law enforcement was just waiting to get probable cause for this arrest. And they got it.
John asked you to do.
Yes. Given his concerns, John asked me that if I believed his daughter was in grave danger, would I be willing to kill Christina Purcell for $5,000?
What did you say when he asked you that?
I was shocked and insulted by the request, and I gave him an immediate and unequivocal no.
So he offered you $5,000 if you would kill Christina Purcell, and you said no.
That's correct.
At some point, did he revisit that subject?
Yes.
Did he make you another offer?
Yes, he did.
How long after the first offer did he make the second offer?
I'm not certain, but I would say maybe 2 or 3 weeks later.
Tell this jury about that.
He was becoming increasingly more worried and distressed about the safety of his daughter. I was as well. The more I learned about this situation and everything, and a lot more than what I've told you, I was also...
Sustained.
What was the second offer?
Now, I wanted to interrupt really quick. There is an accusation that he's making against the victim that they're not allowed to mention in court. He keeps trying to mention it, and the judge keeps shutting him down. And at some point, it gets so bad that the judge just shuts down, gets the jury out, and they take a very long recess. But we're not there yet.
The second offer, he asked me again, if I became convinced that his daughter was in danger, would I be willing to kill Christina Purcell for $10,000?
What did you, or how did you respond to that offer?
I told him, John, there's no amount of money that would ever tempt me to do something like this. And I told him I was insulted that he even thought that would be something I would consider. So I told him I would never do something like this for money. I told him the only way I would ever consider taking action like this is if I was absolutely convinced that his daughter was not only in danger, but that the only way to rescue her from that danger would be to take Christina Purcell's life.
Now, John Mello is his friend, although after Liz, I don't know they're friends anymore. John Mello tried to hire him as a hitman to murder his ex-wife, who is the victim in this case, Christina Purcell. Him and Christina Purcell share a daughter together, and it seemed like what this guy is testifying to. I think he's trying to say that, well, the reason why I did it, well, I had a really good reason. You know, the daughter was in danger. All right, y'all, now we're going to talk about the day of the murder. He's going to divulge all the details, how he did it, how he planned it, how he was stressed about it, how he was hesitant, and how he thought it was going to be easier to shoot her rather than stab her. All the details, and I don't know, I'm guessing this is the first time we've heard all the details. You know what I want to know? When he was arrested, did he say the reason why he may have done this? Or did he deny? And then now he's like, well, now that I'm finally on trial, like, oh my gosh, I have to have this burden lifted off of me.
I woke up that day and I just felt such reluctance, and something in my gut told me it wasn't the right day. And I waited one more day.
Do you remember approximately when you left the Mountain House?
It was much later than I meant to. I think it was about 8 or 8:15 in the morning.
When you left the Mountain House, in which vehicle did you leave?
In my Ford Ranger.
What was in the back of the Ford Ranger?
My bike.
That bike right there?
Yes.
And just for the clarity of the record, what else did you put in your pickup truck in addition to the bike?
I brought gloves, and I put this in a backpack. I brought the paint thinner and the gun I described, the .22. I brought
Wow.
a knife, and I brought a box that was made to look like a gift-wrapped box, and a bunch of roses that I had bought the day before.
I'm so confused. What is the defense's strategy here? It's like, okay, well, we're going to get you guilty on murder, but then we're going to let the judge give you a lighter sentence. Like, if you admitted to the murder, then you're guilty of the murder, right? The jury can't be like, well, you're guilty of the murder, but we feel bad for you, so we're just going to find you not guilty. I'm so confused. What's the strat here?
We'll talk about the roses in a minute. When you left the Mountain House, where did you go?
I drove to a road that runs parallel very close to Canebrake.
When you got to that location, well, before we go further, describe for this jury the ride in your truck from the Mountain House to this location, what you were thinking, what you were feeling, what was going through your mind.
Like I said, I had wrestled with this for months. I had come to the point where rationally I knew that the only way Aida was going to be saved from what she was enduring was for me to take this route. I knew that. But there's another element, a human element, which is just so reluctant and revulsed by the idea of taking a human life. So I had prayed a great deal about this. I had prayed like I'd never prayed before, because even knowing that logically this was the right thing to do, it didn't satisfy that emotional and human aspect where I felt that I needed permission to do this. And I was so terrified that somehow I might be doing the wrong thing. Like, I knew that it was right logically, but the emotional aspect was just reeling against this idea. And more so because she was a woman. I was raised to always protect my sisters and mother, and I opened doors for women growing up. So this idea was just repugnant to me, even though I believed it was necessary to save a child. So on that morning, I had prayed a few days earlier, and I had felt that this was the right thing to do, no matter how terrible and difficult it was going to be. So like I said, I didn't feel anger. I felt pity, because I realized that this was just the only way to save a child. And
He's essentially trying to get the jury to empathize with him of being a killer, of murdering this woman. Now, I don't know what happened before. I don't know if he tried to take steps to try to, because he's trying to say he was trying to save the child, right? And in order to save the child, he needs to kill the mom. And I don't know if they took steps before him and the father of the child, what's his fucking name again? John Mello. I don't know if they took steps to try to protect this child, to, I don't know, try to expose the mom for what they're trying to accuse her of, which you'll see at the very end what they're accusing her of. It's just so crazy. Wild defense here. Wild defense.
And I kept pedaling, and eventually I arrived in front of 122 Canebrake.
That's the house.
We're going to talk about what happened when you got to 122 Canebrake in just a second. You described having a gun and not having a knife. Initially, were you going to use the gun?
I'm sorry, but maybe this is just how he is. I just find his demeanor so unsettling, and it seems so forced. Like, he's just like sitting there. He's like, ah, yes. I felt like I had to save her. You know, I don't know. Maybe this is just his demeanor is, but it just seems overly forced. Like, he's trying so hard to tell a story to the jury rather than just explaining what happened. But I feel like he has to like emotionally be charged, I guess, and get the jury to be there with him. But I feel like I don't know if the jury's going to resonate with a murderer. Like, I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, stop.
Did you ultimately decide to use the gun?
No.
Why not?
I was very concerned about using a gun because of how loud it would be, and I didn't want to alert a neighbor or a bystander who might come to investigate and get involved. So I tried to suppress the gun by making a makeshift suppressor. And in movies, these things are made out to be like it's very easy, and a suppressed gun is just very silent, and that's not the case.
No, they're so loud.
So ultimately, I test fired the gun, and I had bought some subsonic ammunition, which is supposed to be quieter, but I didn't realize that on a revolver, a suppressor doesn't work because the end of the cylinder is open. And I realized,
Jesus, the premeditation, all this planning. I feel like this is just going to be so much more worse for him.
I laid my bike down in the driveway, and I took my backpack off, and I took out the box that had been gift wrapped that had an end open, and I put the .22 revolver in that box. And I put the backpack back on my back, and I took a bunch of roses, and I walked up to the door, and I rang the doorbell. And I was shaking and freaking out at this point because there was nowhere I wanted to be less than at that house on that morning. And when I rang the doorbell, the door opened and a woman came to the front. And I thought it was Christina Parcell, but I wanted to make sure. And I also wanted to make sure that no one else was home. So I told her that while I was holding the box and the roses, that I had a delivery for Lutina Parcell, her sister. And she told me that Lutina wasn't home. So at this point, I realized that Christina was at the house alone. And I handed her the roses. And I took the revolver out of the box and I pointed it at her and I told her.
Wait, did she? I thought she knew who he was. Apparently, he was like CC'd on like the emails during like the custody battles between her and her ex-husband. Did she just like never meet this guy before? Doesn't know what his face is? Doesn't know what he looks like? Wait, what?
Told her to be quiet and to go back into the house, which she did. And I followed her into the house and I shut the door. And I was experiencing such anxiety that my body wasn't really doing what I was telling it to do anymore. Like when I realized that I couldn't use the gun, which was unloaded at this point, my plan had been to try to knock her unconscious because I didn't want to cause her or anyone any pain. That wasn't my intention. I just wanted to save Aida and to make sure that no one else who was a bystander would be involved in this or could be endangered in any way. So I tried, while she was holding the roses, to strike her on the head and knock her unconscious. But my body was fighting me because even though I knew who she was and what she was doing and the danger that was putting Aida in, I was still looking at her and I was seeing a sympathetic figure. I was seeing a woman, and I had always been taught never to hurt a woman, to always protect women and children.
You've already said that.
So when I went to strike her with the gun, my hand didn't really do what I was trying to tell it to. I essentially pulled my strike. It felt like the time I had been cliff jumping with friends. I have a big fear of heights, and there was a 30-foot face that you could jump off and jump into a deep pool of water, and when I would run up to the edge, I would try to get a running start and jump off the edge, and I just couldn't. Like, my body would stop me against my will. And I had to try to do this 10 or 15 or 20 times before I could actually get myself to go over the edge. So when I struck her on the head with the pistol, that's what happened. It didn't knock her unconscious, and I hardly struck her at all, to be honest. So I tried again, and the same thing happened. I just couldn't bring myself to strike her. And at this point, she realized that I was hesitating, and she began to try to move herself and to get away and to fight back. And during this period of time, the roses had dropped and the petals and stems had scattered. And as I was hesitating, I realized that the situation was quickly getting out of control. And if I didn't pull myself together and act soon, this was all going to end up terribly for Aida, because what was happening to her would never be uncovered.
Zach, I'm sorry, just a quick question. You heard testimony that at this time, Christina weighed 163 pounds. How much did you weigh on October the 13th?
About 160.
Go ahead.
So I realized that I was going to have to somehow force myself to do this at any cost. So I pulled out the knife I was wearing. And even though I knew I wasn't going to be able to strike her with any amount of force, I still tried. So I started striking her, though my strikes were pulled. And I think the knife made contact with her, but it wasn't stopping her, and it wasn't inflicting anything that could be a fatal blow.
Yeah, because she's trying to fight for her life. She doesn't want to die. Reminder, Christina Purcell had over, 30 stab wounds on her body? There's 31 stab wounds, right?
And she started to fight back. She realized I was hesitating, and it became a struggle. And in the struggle,
No, she realized you were trying to kill her.
all I could do was try to overcome this resistance I had towards doing this thing. Even though I knew it was right, I still had this physical and emotional resistance to doing it. So I just kept striking her until finally we fell on the floor. And at this point, I had just tried to take my mind out of it and just try to get through this and finish it as quickly as possible, because I realized that it was only becoming prolonged, and I had to do this in order to save Aida. So I don't remember how many times I struck her. I just remember that when it finished, we were on the ground.
Now, I don't know what the description of her body was like. I don't know if they think a lot of the stab wounds were attempted stabs where he was just trying to stab her, but then it would just be kind of messy stabs, or if they're if the I hate you, fuck you, screw you stab, where he was really stabbing her over and over and over again out of pure hatred. I haven't listened to the Emmy or anything like that, so.
And I stopped striking her when she stopped struggling. And at this point, I stood up, and I was still freaking out, and I was in kind of a daze. And I was just trying to pull myself together and figure out what I needed to do to leave the house. And again, I wanted to make sure that I didn't leave anything behind that would connect me to it, because then I believe John would be connected to it, and it would only further put Aida in danger, because I didn't know if Christina Purcell was the only person involved in what was happening to Aida.
Yeah, I don't know. This makes sense, because I think there's an allegation, which he'll talk about towards the end, or he'll just blurt it out. But the allegation is against the mom and the mom's boyfriend, I believe. So it's okay, well, if the mom dies, she's going to maybe be with the mom's boyfriend for a tiny bit. He's still out there. I don't know if I believe his story.
And she wasn't.
Why not target the both of them?
So I quickly looked around to make sure I hadn't left a mask or a glove, and I started to pick up the rose petals and realized that I just didn't have time to do that. Again, I was concerned that a neighbor might have heard the commotion and that a neighbor might come by to investigate, and I didn't want that. So I drew the blinds, and I moved her body away from the door, which had windows, because I didn't want someone to come to the door and see her. And I put my things back in the backpack, and I looked in a mirror before I left to make sure everything was in order, and I saw that she had scratched my face in the struggle. And of course, I realized that this could leave DNA. So I used the paint thinner to try to clean her hands. And then I changed my mask, and I took...
Apparently, they found his DNA in her fingernails. Tis.
Took off my outer shirt because there was blood on it, and I put it in the backpack. And at this point, I was really worried that someone, that Lutina might come back to the house, or Brad Post might come to the house, or a neighbor might come over.
I think Brad Post is the boyfriend.
So I was trying to leave the house as quickly as possible. And before I left, when I realized that I had probably left my DNA there, despite my effort not to, I prayed again and just said that I believe that what I've done is the right thing, and I believe that I did it for the right reason. But if it's your will that I be connected to this...
Oh my gosh, how are you going to pray and be like, hey, I just committed murder, and please, I hope I get away. Please help me get away with this, please. Oh my goodness.
Then I will turn myself in, and I will own up to what I've done, and I'll take responsibility for it, because
But did you do that when you were first arrested, though? That I don't know.
I believed that it was the right thing. And then I left. I exited out through the door, and I got back on my bike, and I pedaled my bike back to the truck, and I drove back to the mountain house. And I was still completely freaking out, and it felt entirely surreal. But there is a big difference in how I felt, in that as soon as I left the house, I felt the most enormous wave of relief wash over me, because I knew from that moment on, Aida would be safe.
I'm going to slow it down to normal speed.
Aida would be safe from the sexual abuse that her mother was perpetrating on her. And there is proof to that the state is hiding from you.
Your Honor, instruct him to be quiet.
Okay, you need to stop talking. The jury. Please stand.
That's the allegation. That's the allegation against the mom and I think the mom's boyfriend. Now, I heard that the mom's boyfriend was arrested for having some shit on his phone after the murders, I think, but I don't know if it was with this daughter. I mean, as far as I know right now, it seems like the allegations have not been proven. It's possible that he could just be lying right now so he can get away with this somehow, even though he already admitted to being guilty of committing the murder. I don't know. So weird. Wild day. He's going to be testifying again tomorrow. Now, I do want to go back a little bit and show you guys his testimony about his sister. He's got a weird relationship with his sister and he like fucking hates her. There is something about this victim that reminded him of his sister, and he was like, I think it like triggered him or something. Like, I just give me a couple minutes, okay? A couple minutes. Let's watch this really quick. Okay, when he was telling this story, I was thinking about, you guys ever see that movie Orphan with the girl Esther, where she's like she was like picked up from the orphanage, she was adopted into this family, and she was not who she like purported to be. Anyways, let's listen about his sister, who is the most evil human being ever.
I don't say this lightly, but my oldest sister, Grace, was the most evil human being I've ever met in my life. She was 10 when she came into our family. The Russian government didn't tell us much about the kids, so we weren't aware of any, if any, behavioral issues. There may have been, and there were many, but specifically with her. I would describe her without reservation as an affectionless psychopath. It wasn't that she was immoral, it was more that she was amoral. She didn't have a sense of right and wrong. Her emotional compass was seemingly non-existent. She was just dead inside. She was a masterful manipulator and deceiver. She could lie at the drop of the hat for reasons that might involve her personal gain or just for the heck of it. She would invent the most absurd, crazy, gruesome stories just to get a reaction out of people. And she could talk about this stuff with the same tone that you might talk about making a sandwich. And this from a girl that I knew between the ages of 10 to 14. It was incredibly disturbing, and the things I learned about that type of personality have stayed with me.
Wait, so so he only knew her from 10 to 14. After 14, was she like sent away or something? Like, maybe she's changed by now, you know? Or maybe she's like a female serial killer, who knows? But let's look at his comparison with his most evil person in the world, sister, and, well, maybe not sister anymore, with Christina Purcell, who is the victim in this case.
John told you about Christina. Did he also provide you with other information about Christina that informed your opinion of her or what you came to know about her?
Yes.
What were some of the documents or other pieces of information that John provided you with?
No objection, hearsay.
No, we're not offering it for its truth. We're offering it to show what he knew. If it's State versus Vic outside here, we're not offering it for its truth. Go ahead.
He offered me, among other things, 3 very pertinent collections of information. One was the photographs that had been discussed that I sent in mailings to various people, along with advertisements from an escort website.
Yeah, apparently him and the friend, John Mello, who was the ex-husband of the victim, had nude pictures of her, and they were just like sending it to people around her.
Which were connected with these photographs. These photographs were of Christina Purcell in various stages of undress. And John told me that they were prostitution advertisements from her previous career as a prostitute.
Or was it like revenge porn? I wonder this John Mello guy was just like a master manipulator.
And looking at these photographs, there was no doubt in my mind that that's what these were. And I don't say this in any way to try to shame. It's simply that, I mean, who said it? Like pornography, you know it when you see it. Well, I think the same can be said in terms of these photographs. They were not cute, sexy, intimate photographs that someone might send to someone they're dating or something. They were lewd and tasteless, and there was a very clear element of advertising, a commercial element. So when I looked at these,
You don't know what those pictures are for?
there was a vacant, arrogant, almost derisive look in her eyes that reminded me so much of my sister. It was a look that said, I can get you to do whatever I want because you want what I have to offer you. And coupled with this was a deposition from 2016 that Christina Purcell had given.
So that's that. He's going to be testifying apparently tomorrow. The judge did held him in contempt and sentenced him 6 months for that. And he was like, I accept it. However, that wasn't caught on camera. That was like an off-camera thing. What else was there? Oh, yeah. They went and arrested his friend or former friend, John Mello. I think law enforcement was probably already investigating John Mello, the ex-husband, and they just needed that probable cause to go after him and arrest him. And because the friend testified and was like, yeah, you know, he tried to hire me, tried to pay me $5,000, $10,000. He has been charged as a co-conspirator so far. Do you guys want to see his, oh my gosh, his picture? Do we have it? His picture right here. Oh gosh. I think this is the current one too, because apparently he was arrested for something else before, but that's the mugshot, y'all. That's John Mello. Zachary Hughes, by the way, again, late 20s. John Mello, almost like, I think he's in his 60s. Huge age gap. The victim, Christina Purcell, in her 40s. So was this man, John Mello, manipulating, lying to Zachary Hughes? Maybe it's the truth. Did Zachary Hughes also go along with the John Mello shit and then later on concoct the story that the reason why he did it was because he believed that the girl was in danger? What I want to know if whether or not he confessed when he was arrested, if he tried to give the story. I don't think so. It seems like this is all new during the trial. But you guys, let me know in the comments below because I am completely new to this case. I was just, covering some other shit and then this popped up and I was like, okay, I got to watch parts of this because this is crazy court moments, y'all. Crazy court moments. Guys, if you guys haven't already watched the crazy court moment during the Karen Reed hearing, I made a video about it yesterday because it was a cliffhanger. Okay. Part 2, they're covering it. They're going to have the next hearing next week. So before you watch the hearing next week together in the live stream, watch yesterday's video. Oh my gosh. It was pretty wild. Maybe Karen Reed's attorneys, maybe they'll get booted off the case, or maybe the state prosecutor made an ass of himself. We'll see what happens. But yeah, it was crazy. Oh my gosh, so many things are happening. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for hanging. That's about it for today. And this is just a random thing that I just wanted to cover with y'all. Have a good one. Good night. Bye, y'all.